This is Algebra 2, Chapter 12, Section 2, in which we will study angles and angle measure. You already know some about angle measure because you know angles are measured in degrees. We're also going to learn about the other way that is commonly used to measure angles, and we'll get to that in a little bit here. But first we need to talk about an angle that's in what we call standard position. When we have an angle in standard position, what we're telling you is the vertex is at the origin, at 0, 0. The initial side of the angle points out the positive x-axis, so it points off to the right. And then the terminal side is wherever it needs to be to make the right measurement. If they told me they were giving me a 30-degree angle, it might be somewhere like here. If they told me it was a 90-degree angle, it would be something like there. If they told me they wanted a 200-degree angle, it would be somewhere like this. The terminal side just goes wherever it needs to go. When we measure angles, we measure them positive if we're going counterclockwise. So from the initial side over to here in a counterclockwise direction, that's positive. If I measured from the initial side in a clockwise direction, okay, now it's a negative value. Just like when we measure on the x and y axis, if we move to the right, we say that's positive and left is negative. Counterclockwise is positive, clockwise is negative. Okay. One of the things they're going to ask us to do is draw an angle in standard position with the given measurement. So I've got labeled on here 90 degrees would be straight up, 180 would be straight out left, 270 would be down. If you continued the pattern, 360 would be here where 0 is, 450, 540, and so forth. That's going in the counterclockwise, the positive direction. I also have labeled for you in the negative direction what each of these points is. So this would be negative 360 again, negative 450, and continue forward. Now I left you some space down here so you can sketch the angles. I'm going to use this graph over here and move my terminal side around to show you where these angles would be. So if they want me to do 240, okay, well this would be 90, this would be 180, 270 would be here, 240 is more than halfway over, so there-ish. So if I were taking notes right now, I would have an x and y axis, and I would draw in something that looks like that. And I would show that I measured it in that direction. Okay, that's what I would do if I were in your shoes right now. Of course, if I were in your shoes, that might be a little bit awkward. Let's try our second one, negative 195 degrees. Here's 0. We're going negative, so I'm going to go down this way to negative 90. Negative 180 and a little more. So somewhere in there. Okay. I'm going to have one axis, or the initial side there. Somewhere in that vicinity. And I'm going to indicate that I measured in that direction to show that that's negative 195. Let's tangle with our last one. We're going for 480 degrees this time. Okay. Positive directions, we're going to go counterclockwise. 90, 180, 270, 360. 90 more makes 450. So 480 will be somewhere out here. Now, how do we show that on here? Okay, I'm going to draw my initial side, 360, and another part of the way around. Okay, that's how I would show on my homework here coming up. That's how I would draw an angle that's supposed to be 480. I would show going all the way around the lap, around the circle, and then some more. Okay. Now, if we have two angles in standard position and their terminal sides are in the same place, we call those coterminal angles. Okay. And they're going to ask us to find some angles that are coterminal with given angles. All we have to do is either add or subtract 360. 360, of course, because it's one lap around the circle. You could also do 720, 2 laps around the circle, or 1080, 3 laps around the circle, but let's keep it simple and just work with 360. So they want us to find some angles, one positive angle and one negative angle, that are coterminal with this given angle here. Well, if I want to find the positive one, I'm going to add 360 to it. And if I want to find a negative angle, I'm going to subtract 360 from it. Okay. Same idea here. They gave me a negative 65. If I want to get a positive angle, add 360. If I want to get a negative angle, further negative, then I subtract 360. Finding coterminals really not that tricky. Once you get the hang of it, it's just adding and subtracting by 360. Now we've been working in degree mode. We've been talking about degrees all the time. There's another common measurement that they use that's related to circles primarily, and this is called radians. Okay. You've used the graphing calculators, and we've had to switch them back and forth in a few cases where you've needed something in degrees maybe, and they've been in radian mode. This is what's going on, is other classes are using them as radians, but you need degrees, so you have to know how to switch it. Every calculator is different, so I'll have to show you how to do it with your particular calculator, and I'll show you also how to do it with the graphers. Just make sure you ask me about it if you're not sure how to get your calculator to do the job. We are going to be asked to convert between the two systems of measurement. So we're going to use, there's a couple of different ways to do it. Your book uses a multiplier method that's not always the easiest to keep straight. I like to use a proportion. I put radians on top and degrees on bottom. Now, the way radians work is pi radians is halfway around the circle. So pi radians, lining up with the radians side, halfway around a circle is 180, half of 360. Okay. So pi over 180 is the ratio that's here. And this will always be pi over 180 on this side. This side over on the left will change based on the problem. But pi over 180 is always in play when you're converting between the two systems. So they're going to ask us to do some conversions. Convert between radians and degrees. Obviously, if they give you degrees, you need to get radians. If they give you radians, you need to get degrees. They gave me negative 30 degrees here. So I'm going to set up my basic ratio. I don't know the radians. I do know the degrees, negative 30, pi to 180. Cross multiply. Okay. Now notice here, guys, I'm leaving pi in the problem. You want to leave your answers in terms of pi as much as possible. So don't plug in 3.14, don't use the pi button, just leave it be. Now I'm going to divide by 180. On the right, obviously, that cancels out, or on the left, excuse me, that cancels out. On the right, I have a fraction to reduce. So I'm going to put into my calculator negative 30 over 180 as a fraction and reduce it, and it's going to give me negative 1/6. I have negative 1/6 of pi, or you could just say negative pi over 6. Either way. And again, remember, leave your pi in the answer. Okay, just leave it in terms of pi. Don't give me, 0.568 or whatever that decimal turns out to be. It's almost certainly not 0.568. I just picked a random number. Okay, let's tangle with another one, 135 degrees. That's degrees, so it's going to go on the bottom. We don't know the radians, so I'll put an X up there. Cross multiply. Divide by the 180. Now I've got 135 over 180. My trusty calculator tells me that's 3/4. So that'll be 3 pi, because pi was all still on top, over 4. That's going into radians. Let's go out of radians into degrees. So I have a negative 3 pi over 8. Now this is going to look a little funny to you until you start getting used to it. And I have negative 3 pi over 8 for radians. I don't know the degrees. Pi over 180 is still the ratio that I'm using. When I cross multiply here, okay, I get negative 3 pi times 180 over 8. And I want to get x by itself, so I'm going to go ahead and divide both sides by pi. So that puts a pi in this denominator. Now look what happens. The pi's cancel. The pi's cancel. So I'm left with negative 3 times 180 divided by 8. And my calculator gives me a clean answer, negative 67.5 degrees. Okay. Let's do one more like that one. We have 5 pi over 2. That's radians, so it'll be on top of the fraction. X for degrees that we don't know. Pi over 180. We'll cross multiply again. So I get pi x equals 180 times 5 pi over 2. Okay. Divide by pi in both sides. Okay. The pi's cancel. The pi's cancel. And now it's easy. 5 times 180 divided by 2 gives me 450 degrees. Okay. Degrees and radians, switching back and forth, and being able to draw angles. Those are the two big things, and then finding coterminal by adding or subtracting with 360. If you had questions along the way, hopefully you wrote those down. Bring them in with you, and we'll see you in class.